Hi, Louise.
Hello, Sarah.
So here we are with Gabrielle Glaser's American Baby. We are on chapter 9, Better Families. Oh, wait, before we dig in, we are about halfway through
Yeah.
this book now, and we are trying to figure out what book we should read for our next season. So we were thinking that if you're a Patreon or if you want to sign up to become a Patreon, which is awesome, um, you get to vote. Give us your thoughts about what book. Reach out to us on Facebook. Tell us who you are, Facebook or email, wherever,
Yeah. Uh,
Instagram. Just let us know what book and we'll tally them up. We were thinking of The Girls Who Went Away, but also there's also plenty other books out there.
mhm.
So let us know, Patreon members or soon to be Patreon members. Let us know your thoughts.
What a great idea. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just thought it because like why not get some input from our listeners?
Yeah, I agree. Well, and we're always like wondering and guessing this is better.
Yes, exactly.
So this is a big chapter again. Better families. Like
Hmm.
I learned a lot in here. I really cannot highlight enough that people that aren't adopted or even know someone adopted, everyone should read this just for the historical context.
Just to understand how adoption came to be what it is now. And
Yeah.
we've touched on it previously that Georgia Tan was a big
Yeah.
piece of how adoption became private.
Mhm.
But even going back further, the how things happened.
It was fascinating to me. I really didn't know this myself. So it's
Right, because it talked about, back in the 1800s and when
yeah.
things were in rural environments, right? If a
Yeah.
mother died in childbirth or a teenager got pregnant, the community, the family would take care of those kids.
Yeah. It says
Um,
here's a little part speaking of that on 119. Because they had, everybody farmed or were an agricultural community. So it said extra mouths also meant extra hands to chop wood, harvest crops, blah, blah, blah. To the extent it existed, adoption was informal and open. An unmarried woman got pregnant. She typically married or nearby relatives took the child in as their own, and the child knew then who they were still.
mhm.
There was no erasing identities. And it was just like, we're bringing up so and so's baby and they're helping in the group here. Very informal.
Right, just that's what you did. But prior to that page, well, I had some things highlighted, but
Mhm.
I highlighted one thing. There had always been adoptions and facilitators. We're talking now, like in that
Yeah.
back in the 50s, from like post-war up until 1975.
Mhm.
There had always been adoptions and facilitators, but now a full-scale and complicated bureaucracy, think of it as an adoption industrial complex, came to fruition after World War II under a system of laws and policies crafted to serve the interests and privacy of the upper and
Mm,
emerging middle class.
good intentions often mask cold calculations.
Yes. Yes.
Sarah, it's like that's when it really became the business of
Yeah.
adoption.
In fact, on the first page of the chapter, between there was an estimated from 1944 to 1975, and 2.7 million. However, those did not include the so-called gray or black market, private cases in which attorneys or OBs arrange for adoptive parents to cover a pregnant woman's OB care and living expenses, as well as pay an extra fee in exchange for her baby. One researcher estimates that nearly 39% of adoptions fell into that category. That would bring that number of post-war adoptions to well over 3 million.
It's insane. I had no idea it was that large. And there's things that went on. I don't know if we want to tackle each one, but that happened also going up in history, baby trains and orphan trains
The
and baby
orphan trains.
farms.
My
Do you know about that? I didn't really know about that.
I did because my hold on. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I did know about the orphan trains because my stepmother had, I want to say, an aunt um that was one of the kids on the orphan train
Mhm.
that came from the East Coast into the Midwest.
Wow. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I
So
mean, it really was so harsh. They'd ship these kids off and they were considered just chattel. I mean,
they basically were considered chattel,
yeah, it was literally a little bit like it was a slave trade. I mean, in my
slave
opinion, that
trade.
she mentions that, but people termed it looser, but they got to a place in a platform, showered and cleaned up, and they were put on display for farmers and different people in the area to come and kind of go, oh, look at their muscles and are they a good worker and bid on them. Isn't that called slavery?
Yeah.
Indentured service. It can also be indentured
Indentured
service.
servitude until they were 18.
18.
I mean, they
Yeah.
actually called it indentured servitude.
Yeah. Mhm.
I do know there's a orphan train museum somewhere in Kansas near,
Oh,
like, a couple hours from me
if
or
I visit
something.
you, that's something we should do.
Yes. Yes.
Because I mean, I've heard of it, but I didn't even have the bandwidth to understand what this was about. The other thing I did not know about was baby farms.
Oh, I did not know about that either.
How
And
crazy.
the babies were just dying,
Yeah.
from they were feeding them.
96% of them in some cases, or that here it says in 1914, George Walker, a doctor, published an investigation into the baby farms in Baltimore called The Traffic in Babies, which kind of started to alert people into this. Squalid conditions, unpasteurized milk that contained typhus and tuberculosis. I mean, and then they started saying, well, the baby should be with the mom for a few months, but then they still took babies away. I
Right.
mean, it's not like it greatly improved when people found out. It just, what really started changing was the Industrial Revolution, really.
The Industrial Revolution but I just want to highlight the horrible
Mhm.
man's name who
Horrible.
started the orphan trains,
Yeah.
Charles Loring Brace. So
Ugh. Yeah.
I think we should name these perpetrators
Yeah.
as
And
they
he
come up.
he thought it was a great idea to how to make money on children.
Make money on children.
Yeah. And then so then we get into the Industrial Revolution. People are now playing, and now there's something called parenting. They hadn't really, there wasn't, yeah.
The phrase parenting wasn't coined until
Until
later,
yeah,
until
they
after
had
the
people,
Industrial Revolution.
yeah. And they start, I didn't even know that actually. And people started to see kids as they could, especially upper middle class and wealthier kids can play. And you have dishwashers now and this and that. And so it started to become popular for people if you didn't have children to go get one, which is also, I mean, they actually did advertising for it,
hmm
which was bizarre too.
It did say that the Willows in Kansas
Mm,
City would advertise babies.
and looking cherub or something.
Yes,
They had cherub
cherubic
babies.
looking.
And they had there was something else where there was a disgusting advertisement. I couldn't get over it. It said the greed in the adoption process emerged a few years later with this newfound people wanting babies. That's when it gets into the Georgia tan, into
Well, so
her.
Georgia Tan, I know we're not going to go into a whole ton of stuff,
Mhm.
but she started, nobody asked questions about how she acquired the babies and then began transporting them across state lines. Tan's actions were flagrantly fraudulent and were shielded by her insistence on the importance of closed adoptions. Tan would eventually be exposed, but her favored legal arrangement, the sealing of original birth certificates, would become the standard practice of every mainstream adoption agency in America.
Yeah. What fascinated me is we've read a lot about this, and if anybody doesn't know Georgia Tan, they should look it up. But is how no one asked any questions where this child came from. I would ask, I think, wouldn't I? I'm like,
We would think, we would hope,
we
we
would
would
hope.
ask.
I mean, people are a product of their times, but it's disgusting, some of this. And some people did highlight how disgusting it was. There was people trying to,
Yes, there definitely were voices out there.
yeah.
And it had Georgia Tan. She enticed reporter friends to write gushing articles about her for the local paper, accompanied by photos of her prettiest babies. Their captions read, "Could you use a Christmas
That's
baby?
the part.
Yours for the asking." Like,
Can you imagine? And look at this. She became a millionaire from an elaborate scheme in which she charged adopted parents in California and New York 5,000, equivalent to 90,000 today.
mhm.
It was all about things she
For
had
the
to do
baby.
that she didn't do anything with. I mean, it was all
Well, and then
and
she
she would
just got
steal them.
so bold that she started stealing toddlers from
Yeah.
preschools. I mean, to
Yeah.
children who had homes and families, and she
Right
just
out of their front yards, some of them.
steal them out of their front yards. She was provided Joan Crawford with
Yes.
her children and a few celebrities.
And part of the
of that
reason we
from that
know
time.
about it is from Joan Crawford's daughter, who wrote the book, Mommy
Mhm.
Dearest. I mean, she's one of the
Yes.
people who exposed it. Also, we can't say she was not alone in this. She had help.
Help from
So,
doctors, help from
yeah,
lawyers.
which is sick.
It was a whole
Police.
let's call it what it is. It was child trafficking.
Yeah. And then
That's what it
Louise
was.
Wise, back to our great
Mhm.
Louise Wise agency, they did start as a decent place, which it's not, they started off to try to help different avenues. And then it turned into, oh, you can make some money here.
Mhm.
So I like this part. It didn't take long for adoption agencies to play to adoptive parents. Fears that the private route to parenthood was the most perilous. Around the country, agencies told prospective clients that only by paying fees and submitting to a screening process could you filter out the right kind of girls for the right kind of baby.
Mm.
A Louise Wise brochure warned of the dangerous risk posed by adopting through a doctor, lawyer, or friend. I mean, you could get anybody if you did that. Just some horrible baby. Not the
Horrible
ones we
baby.
test and do sick things to before we give them to you.
Ah,
It's just infuriating, Sarah.
just infuriating. Well, again, we highly encourage you to read the book if you want to
Please.
be as outraged as we are when we read these books at night.
And this actually really leads to our guest today because of another form of stolen kids.
Yes.
our
Another
country.
absolute travesty and stain on our country. You will see shortly with our guest coming up.
Yeah. See you
And remember
soon.
to weigh in about what book.
What book? And by the
What
way,
book?
subscribe when you listen, subscribe and give us a review if you can. We're really trying to build our numbers up.
Yes. Okay. See you in a couple minutes.
See you soon.
Soon.